it over to you.
Alrighty. Let's see what we got here. So we got 15. Alrighty, well, first of all, I just want to thank you guys for joining and listening in on our first virtual Turf Club presentation. Just want to say thank you to Dr. Kaminsky, and just want to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Williams. Matt's an Ohio State alumni. He's worked for the Cincinnati Reds, and he was the manager of the OSU Turfgrass Research Facility. And now he holds a position as a sales engineer for SGL since 2019. And Matt, I just want to say thank you for doing this and taking the time out of your day to come talk to us. It's really a pleasure.
Yep, glad to do it. Thanks. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. So,
I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
All right, thanks. Well, I'll try to keep this, and we were talking there before. If you guys got any questions, I think you have an opportunity to submit those to Dr. Kaminsky, and then he'll have a way to bump in and ask me. So if I'm not clear about something or you're just curious, you know, this is my first virtual talk, so it might be some ups and downs, but I want you guys to, if you have questions, to, you know, jump in and ask them, please. So.
Yeah, Matt, I'll just chime in a second because I think that there's people still popping in. If anybody hovers over their Zoom screen, there's a Q&A section in there that I'll be monitoring. And so if anybody does have any questions, we'll just put them in there and I'll chime in and get Matt to answer those. If you put it in the chat, it gets kind of lost in the shuffle of a lot of people talking and stuff. So try to put it in the Q&A. All right, it's all you.
Gotcha, cool. So, all right, well, yeah, again, I work for a company called SGL, and it's Stadium Grow Lighting is what our company does, and as our core business. We have some ancillary products that support the lighting stuff, but what we primarily do is distribute lights. And this is from Lambeau Field, which I believe Alan Johnson is a proud Penn State alumni, if I'm not mistaken. And I show this picture to get an idea on, this is our largest installation, or one of our largest installations in North America. So to get an idea, when we talk about lights, grow lights, and you know what the system's like, that the Packers can cover virtually their entire surface with the number of lights that they have. But also want to show you or demonstrate that, you know, this is like, you know, top of the stadium view, literally, but it's not just to have the surface that they have in the climate that they have. There's not one answer. So it's not going to be lights. It's not going to be their root zone. It's a multitude of technologies that come together that allow them to have the quality playing surface that far north and that late into the season. So like, for example, it starts with Alan and his staff. They've got an excellent ground staff there. That, you know, if you're just going to send an electrician out to do this, he's going to have some challenges. But Alan and his staff have been together a long time and do a great job. They have an excellent root zone and field construction, undersoil heating, and a myriad of other tools, including these lights, that help them stack these technologies to allow them to grow grass well into December and even the first part of January in Green Bay, Wisconsin. A little bit of background of our company. Our founder, Nico, they still are involved in cut roses in the Netherlands. And he's a big soccer fan, big football fan. So he was frustrated 25 years ago. He'd go to matches in the winter, and there was poor playing conditions on these soccer pitches. But he still had to have the exterior turf around his greenhouses mowed throughout the winter because of the bleed over from the lights. And he put 2 and 2 together and came up with this idea of somehow bringing artificial light out onto athletic surfaces. And now that's grown to where we have 350 clients worldwide, and here in the US, 25 clients here in the US that are using this technology. This is a shot. I was there this summer, and this is just one section of one of the greenhouses, and it's just roses for days. It's pretty neat. And the technology that they use to pick these roses and determine, once they're picked, where they're going to go to, because apparently there's different regions of the world that prefer different morphologies of leaf, of how the rose looks, and they have ways to analyze this and ship them out to whatever regions they'll be best sellable at. So what we're going for, we call this our SGL system, but the key is to provide quality playing surfaces and help field managers, and to a lesser extent, there is a small market in golf, but primarily athletic surfaces are where we work the most. But the key is to having quality surfaces that are safe. And if you're involved in sports turf at all, it's always about safe, playable surfaces. So these are tools that can be used to improve the quality and safety of the field. And in doing that, it allows more use of the field. So if you have a surface that's compromised or it's just deficient, whether it's fertility or it's attacked by disease, it affects the quality, and then its ability to be used goes down. So by providing a quality playing surface, you can use it more. And if you're also involved at all in athletic fields, it's rare that a sports stadium is just there for the primary tenant. It's also there to generate revenue, whether it's through festivals or concerts or finish on the 55Ks and stuff like that. So the better condition the field is, the more opportunity is to do more events and drive revenue. So we have two distinct classes of lights that we use. And what's been around since the beginning has been these high pressure sodium lights. There's a bulb and an armature the bulb's about 10 inches long, and it's installed up here. You can see where the light's coming out. And it's just a light bulb. It's linear and it emits light in all directions. And one of the benefits of this, then there's a reflector right in here that forces this light down. So this unit right here, it's 40 feet long, but the lights only have to be, with these reflectors and the way the light's emitted, they only have to be on 20-foot centers. So there's not a lot of structural material, and you can cover a large area. This unit covers about 4,700 square feet. This is a unit that's similar to the units that I showed you from Green Bay. Other advantage is it has a very similar wavelength distribution as the sun does. So you're getting, virtually a very similar type of light that the sun emits. And another benefit that also is, oftentimes with this style of light in general is considered a drawback is the heat that it's emitted. So that's an inefficiency in the bulb, but that temperature actually helps raise the surface temperature, and biological activity is driven by temperature. So you can get a increase in surface temperature, which helps with growth along with the additional light. So in this instance, the heat is a positive. Now you do have to be careful if it's summertime and you're in an area where you have low light conditions and you're trying to use these and it's already hot and you're adding heat. So that would be a drawback to this type of system, is the heat in that situation. But generally these lights are used in the fall and into the winter when it's not 85 or 90 degrees outside, but not always. And then, the newest technology is LED lighting. Much like lighting across the world, it went from incandescent to fluorescent, and now LED is the newest technology. These are good because you can dial in wavelengths. We're working on different wavelengths. You can pick the wavelength here is kind of modeled after the chlorophyll absorption curve. So there's a lot of red light, a little bit of blue light, and this picture here was taken right at dusk. During the day, due to those wavelengths, it's really hard to see the light that's actually coming off of these, but it's definitely there. But as you get to the natural light fades away, you can see the LED light that's striking the surface.
Matt, when you are dialing in these wavelengths, are you talking about like a range of wavelengths or like specific? Like in one set of light, you could do like 400 to 480, and then in the same light, you could do 600 to 680, or is it like a range? There's both. We've selected a wavelength that we like, a wavelength combination that we like, proprietary. But there are some armatures that we call them, the actual light
rigged or that are adjustable. If you wanted to dial up a certain wavelength, you could dial it up and dial it back. But the LED fixtures that we use they're fixed at this point, and we think we've selected that based off growth models that we've established. So that answer your question?
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the advantages, so there's no heat with this generally. There's a little bit of heat, but nothing like what the high pressure sodium puts off. So you would think, oh, that'd be great, you know, if you did have to use these in the summer. But like I mentioned, most clubs are using these in the fall and the winter when light is limited. Now, if you were in the deep south and it was 100 degrees, and boy, it'd be nice to have a second set of lights that did not put off heat. But we haven't found those clubs yet that have been able to invest in a set of summer lights and a set of winter lights. But we've distributed a fair amount of these. We have 2 of these units in the U.S. and there's a larger distribution in Europe of these LED lights. But to overcome the lack of heat, there's extra heating elements that are built in, and you can see right here, this is a heating element that syncs up, but this is a sensor here that's measuring temperature underneath the light. And this is a sensor that's attached that you can dial in that once it reaches a certain threshold, it'll turn these extra heating elements on, and it can provide heat. So if it is in the fall and you want heat, you can have it. Now, the big advantage of the LED lights is that they're much less costly to run just on a light per unit basis. But that is, when you're just running light, the running costs are considerably less. But if you want that heat, as soon as you turn that heat on, that cost savings goes out the window, and it's very similar to that of the high pressure sodium. So another challenge we have, and we're trying to overcome this with LED through our research and development, is they emit light in a much different way. It's directional. So the sphere of influence is much smaller. As you can see, I mentioned earlier, if I back up, these arms are 20 feet apart, and you're covering, when you saw that first picture, the entire surface underneath there was covered because of the way the light falls off those reflectors. You have to have these armatures very close together to get that full coverage. So it makes us have to build smaller units just because of weight and the structural material that we go into building them. We have a variety of type of units. These are one of our mobile units. This is what you'd seen earlier, a little older version, a steel version, but those arms just fold up, and they're still 40 feet long, but instead of being as wide as they are, they're about 7 feet wide when they're collapsed like this. They have four-wheel steering, so if you have to make a tight turn like back here and through the tunnel, or once you get into the tunnel at a venue, you can maneuver them around pretty easily. But these are a mobile unit that we have, our most popular unit. There's some venues that they don't want to have that extra traffic. So this is Wimbledon. Sadly, they've canceled that tournament yesterday, I think I heard. But they're very concerned about any extra traffic. So driving the units out there, or even rolling them out there, we came up with a solution where you don't have to put them on the turf. There's rails here, and they can move these light rigs up and down and supply the amount of light that they need. And these are actually at a height where you can work under them while they're out there as well. And then our most recent integrated solution was at Tottenham in London, where this is what we call a fully integrated solution. These lights, similar to the ones at Wimbledon, but they collapse and they stay in the stands. One of these ends of the stands raise up, the lights get stored under there, so they can have these lights cover half of the field at one time, maintain it. There's no extra traffic on the field. And like I said, it's a fully integrated system. Now, if you know anything about this stadium, this is a grass surface, obviously, but this surface actually lifts up and moves out of the stadium and moves into the parking garage. And then there's an artificial surface under there that they can use for concerts or NFL games and whatnot. But while part of this integrated solution is while this grass system is underneath the parking garage, we also have lights installed underneath the garage that helps provide light. So if it's under there for 10 days, it's not coming out deprived of light and photosynthesis. And these are LED lights that are underneath here in the garage. So what makes you have to supplement light? You know, what factors do? One, obviously shade from whether it's a roof or a scoreboard or a big stand. This is Columbus Crew Stadium where I used to work, and you know, this isn't a venue that has a problem with light. Small scoreboard, there's no roof, big open skies, but from a shade standpoint, it's relatively not a problem. Day length can be an issue if you have a league that like the NFL where you're playing, where you start late summer when days are getting shorter, and you're still playing into November and December when days are really getting shorter. There's just not as much light available, and that's where we can help extend the growing season by using supplemental lighting. So, and you know, the key is, and you guys know this, you know, plants make their own food through photosynthesis, and even if there's the substrates are there, like carbon dioxide and water are there, without that light energy, the plant can't make the carbohydrates that's needed, and that goes on and allocated throughout the plant to grow roots and leaves and do all the things that it does. So when you don't have enough light, the plant's not growing and it's going to be compromised. So from a shade standpoint, this was in Birmingham, England. It's a club called Aston Villa. This picture was it was in November, so short day period. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I took this photo, it was before lunch, it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, they've had their best opportunity for light is already past them. You know, if you backed up 2 hours, this whole north side was probably getting full sun. But from here on out, it's just they're going to be in a reduced light condition. And it's going to be this way. And they're in the middle of their season now. So they have to find a way, if they're going to have this big roof structure and stands, to grow grass and produce a quality field. You can see the light rigs are here on the sideline right now. They've pulled them off to maintain the field. There's a groundsman up here mowing the pitch. And so when a stadium is built like this, it's just, that stuff's out of the groundsman's control. And that's very popular in Europe and has been for many years. These smaller stadiums with big roofs, they play during the winter. The roof helps protect the fans, but prevents light from getting in. But they're bringing that European style to the U.S. now. So this is a rendition of the new Columbus Crew Stadium, which is scheduled to open next year, where all the fans are covered. So if it's raining, none of the fans are getting wet, but it's obviously going to have an impact on turf quality. And I mentioned day length. You know, you guys probably all know this, but, you know, here at the beginning of April, where I'm at, and you guys are probably in about the same latitude in State College, but we got about 13 hours of daylight. That's a lot of light. I had a nice sunny day here, but you know, you get towards the fall, you move past the summer solstice, and those days get shorter. And in Columbus, the days get below 10 hours that are available to photosynthesize. Something else I'll mention is the quality of the light that you get in April. It's probably better to say that the light that you get in December is not the same quality of light that you get in July, and that has to do with the angle of the sun in the summer versus the winter, and I'll show you that in a second. So the Earth is obviously has a tilt on its axis, and so here on the left, this would be summer in the northern hemisphere. That makes the sun higher in the sky and allows for longer days, longer day lengths. Over here on the right, in the winter, the axis of the Earth is tilted away, and that positions the sun lower in the sky and has shorter days in the northern hemisphere winter. But the effect that it also has on quality of light is the angle that the sun hits. And it's like you take a flashlight in the summer when the Earth is pointed towards the sun. It's like you're focusing the sun's rays in a smaller area, and there's more light available, more photons available to do photosynthesis. Where in the winter or in the fall, as the axis is tilting away, that same light is coming from the sun, but it's spread over a longer area, and it's not as intense. So, and we see this, or I see this in talking to architects and project managers when they're looking, they do shade analysis. And a lot of times they say, oh yeah, it's September, we're still getting, here's our shade pattern. And these are very useful. You know, here's in the morning, this is in the soccer stadium in Kentucky. You know, we've got some early gold mouth shade here by 11, it's clear. And they'll say, well, you're getting about 6 hours of sun for the day. Well, that 6 hours just is not the same 6 hours of light in the fall that you would get in the summertime based off its intensity. I also see stuff like this, which this is actually a really neat way. This was provided to us by a stadium that's being built, where they had a shade analysis done. And this runs through the year. Every 5 days, the average amount of daylight, the cooler the temperature, the less light. And this particular venue, they're estimating, here we are at the end of May, and they're still got a corner there that gets very little light. And as you move through the summer, and this again, though, it's measured in hours of light per average per day. But, here in the fall, you can see that this place has, with a big roof, is going to struggle through the fall with the appropriate amount of light that's available to the plant. I started that over again. So I was kind of building towards this, getting away from, you know, oh, we get X amount of hours. A new term that's come out that's not that new, but it's called the daily light integral. And it is just a measurement of the light that reaches the surface throughout the entire day. So these instantaneous measurements of how many photons are hitting an area, they sum that over the course of a day. And then you have a better calibrated idea of how much light you're getting. And the daily light integral, commonly referred to as DLI, that differs by location, weather. So if you have a few days that's gloomy, there's not as much light available, and that DLI is lower for those 1 or 2 days when it's gloomy. You don't have the sun shining. Your site, you know, the south side of the stadium on that previous picture, where you saw that south end was impacted by light. There's a different DLI for that southern side of that field than the northern side of the field. And then obviously time of year based off of day length. And something that's unique is that I think is the plant requirements change by species and use. So I have a Kentucky bluegrass lawn that I'm looking out here now, and you know, I mow it once a week, whether it needs it or not. And but if you take that same Kentucky bluegrass cultivar and you manage it as a athletic field and you're mowing it every day under an inch, its light requirement changes. So it's the optimum DLI for that is going to be higher. And in Columbus, Ohio, where I'm at, it's probably similar in State College. Seasonally, DLI ranges from 10 to 45. So, you know, in December, it's very low, and in June and July, it's near 45. So now cool season turfs require DLI of about 20 to 25, or warm season turf, it's more like 30 to 35. And so they have a much higher appetite for light. So that has a big impact on what type of turf you're using, on how much light you need. These are neat charts that are available for the country. I think some researchers collaborated. I forget what university there was. There's a couple universities that got together, but this is just a map of the DLI, and you can see this swath coming through here. Here's where I'm at. You guys are over here, I think, about here. But what you'll see is this is just for October, the average DLI for ranges of the country. But if you backed up to September, this line right here, it'd move up a little bit. And I apologize, I'm colorblind. I believe this is purple and blue, but if it's not, it's because I have difficulty seeing colors. If you go back,
I think you're pretty close. It's like dark blue and blue.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Blues and purples are tough for me. So, but anyhow, yeah. So the dark blue, if you backed up to September, this line would move up because the days will be a little bit longer, and the larger DLI would move north. And if you bumped October, you'd see this line move south. And have an impact. So it's good to know what light's available on average. And then I put this thing together again with my colors. I believe I got this blue line here. It's Columbus, Ohio's DLI for the month. This red line is the low end for warm season turf. So if you wanted to have a Bermuda grass tee box or a driving range tee in Columbus, Ohio. When the blue line's below the red line, there's just not enough light to run the photosynthetic process, the C4 photosynthetic process. So you have to get to where the DLI is over the light requirement or supplement light. So, and this is just for open space. It had to do with shade or anything like that. Or, this lower line is for cool season grasses. So you can see for Columbus, Ohio, they're much better adapted for cool season grasses. Now, there are some warm season athletic fields that are targeted just for use like in this May, June, and July for training fields. And that works well because there's a lot of light available in the region where I live. And this is a thing that my company does. We take a growth model where we look at, here's the DLI for whatever region that we're working with, whatever venue, that's how much light's available if there wasn't a stadium or there wasn't a stand or a roof. Then we do some stadium analysis. We get surveyed data from the stadium, its location and the orientation due to north, and how big the roof is and how tall the stand is. And then we can determine how much transmission is going to get down to the field. So like if you get down here, you're only getting 60% transmitted of 40 total DLI available. Well, that's what, that's about 25. So if you have a cool season turf, you probably have enough light getting to the field. If it's a warm season turf, you probably don't. So, and then our models also go in to give recommendations on how much supplemental light, this lighting hours is recommended supplemental hours of light per day on average, and for the entire 4-week period here. And then what else we try to influence, it's one thing that just growing a field like they are right now where there's no athletes playing on them. But once you start putting activity, and these guys are predicting 15 hours of training to happen on that surface, that's obviously going to impact the quality, and you may need more light to have a quality surface. And what we also do is we try to we have systems that help monitor the light that they're using and take field data. So these analyzers collect soil moisture and salinity and temperature and humidity, and all this stuff is then loaded up into a portal, which includes lighting hours for the season, and it can help groundsmen make decisions on how to manage their field. And they collect this data as long as the cubes are on the field. It collects this data, and it helps the grounds manager make decisions. Now we have done some demonstrations, and this goes back to where I was talking about stacking technologies. This is an example. This is on Bermuda grass at Duke University, at Duke, where we put a grow tarp. This is obviously just supplemental light. This is a tarp plus supplemental light, and this is just a tarp over here, our grow tarp. And once we got done, we repeated this in a couple different locations, but you can see the enhancement that using two technologies, using a grow tarp plus the supplemental light had over just the light alone on Bermuda grass and just the tarp alone on Bermuda grass. So I've used those tarps a lot in my previous jobs as a head groundskeeper and a turf manager. And those tarps do a great job when the sun's shining. And if you get 5 or 6 days gloomy in a row, it doesn't drive the temperature up the way that you want it to. And it's important. It does do a nice job insulating and protecting the surface. But if you want to get increases in temperature, that's where, putting those two technologies together, you get a better result. We also have a research facility in the Netherlands. This is our Research and Innovation Center, where there's outdoor and indoor research. We have climate controlled indoor work that we do, and outdoor work. We have a group of agronomists that have ongoing season to season research, and then also little short-term things that come up they think would be interesting, and a couple different varieties of turf that they use at our research center. And in 2019, we sponsored research at University of Tennessee and Michigan State, doing some work in low light conditions or almost indoor type conditions. This was Bermuda grass at the University of Tennessee. And we built these indoor units that had very low light. The instantaneous light was like 50 micromoles, which added up to be like, I don't know, 2 DLI for the day, which wasn't nearly enough, way below the sufficiency level. And then we built these little things. So they primarily were only getting supplemental light from, this is high pressure sodium. This was LED. It's hard for me to tell if this was a control or not. But so we repeated this both in Knoxville and in East Lansing, and saw some interesting results. And we also had an external control, and obviously we saw that the best light was sunlight, but we saw some very neat results on the ability to grow grass indoors, basically. And we're going to take that, and we're still mulling over that and what kind of research we want to do moving forward. So that was the first time that our company has engaged U.S. universities for research projects. It was a lot of work, but it was pretty neat to see it come together. So I don't want to ramble on too long. I'd love to answer any questions or go back to anything, but that's kind of supplemental lighting and improving field quality and extending growing seasons. And I appreciate you guys the chance to talk to you today.
Awesome. McNitt was in here, but he had to run because he had another meeting that he had to go. He was texting me during this.
Gotcha.
We have time. If anybody, we have time. We have nothing to do except hang out. If anybody has any questions, you can put them in the Q&A or in the chat. I had a question for you, Matt, while you were there. Sure. Did you start working there when Niels Dockema was still working there?
No. Oh yeah, I know Niels.
Niels, yeah. Niels was one of my students. He was probably one of my first students to graduate back in 2010, I think.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I know he worked for SGL, and he used to travel from the Netherlands to like Ontario because it was easier. Then he'd drive across into the States, and they'd always ask him like, "What the hell are you doing?" Because he's from the Netherlands. And but yeah, he would always kind of swing by and check out the research plots at Valentine and stuff. Somebody does have a question. Chase, who's in Hawaii, says, "What are the watts per LED?" They're
1,000 watt now. We do have some 600 watts that were our first kind of line of lights, but we've moved towards 1,000 watt. I'm sorry, for LED, did you say?
LED, yeah.
LED are 400 watt. So our armature, which has about 15 light or diodes on it, are 400 watt. So. And then our high pressure sodium, I got it confused. Now basically everything we distribute now are 1,000 watt, but for a long time 1,000 watt weren't available, and we had 600 watt, and it's more light, and you can have them out there. You can get more photons out in less time with the 1,000 watt lights. So it's a good question.
We have another person, Kurt Bakos, or I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He said, "How long is the process to manufacture the lights?" And I guess I would add to that, because it's obviously not just the bulbs and the lights, because you're probably getting those from, but like the whole process of getting the entire units. Like, how long does that take to develop?
Yeah. So if you want, like, we custom build them. I mean, there's a lot of cost in building them and stuff. So it's about 4 months. So if you place an order today, it'd be 4 months by the time we got it into our production line. I mean, they're getting built every day, but once they're in our production line, and then to ship them from the timeline in Europe is less, because it's easier to distribute them over there. But then once we get them across the ocean and clear customs, about 4 months. So.
How about obviously Wimbledon and the UK? They already have it. I'm sure there's probably a lot of people in the UK using these lights. What do you anticipate with the Brexit? With is that going to slow things down once that kind of fully goes through in terms of getting lights to that area?
Yeah, my boss, he represents the UK, and UK is a very big market, and I don't know what the answer to that is. So quite frankly, there's been discussions about it. Thus far, it hasn't, but that thing's been dragging on, for long time. So it's hard to tell what the impact is going to be. But you're right. Like in the UK, and I meant to say that earlier, and even much of Europe, these lights, they're not a luxury. They're a utility. They're like an irrigation system, like the way their stadiums are built, and when they play, they all have them. So we'll have to find a way to, if Brexit has an impact, we'll have to find a way to overcome that. So,
yeah, there's a couple other questions.
Sure.
Charles asked, is there any research to suggest the lighting helps with suppressing disease?
No, we don't have any, even anecdotal stuff to my knowledge. We have that's a good question, but no, we don't.
My guess is this. I mean, that's my background is pathology. My guess is clubs that can afford and stadiums that can afford these lighting systems aren't worried so much about pest pressure because they're treating the pests. And so this is definitely more of a growth thing than it is the side effects of the side benefits of the light. I kind of equate it to like rolling fairways on golf courses and stuff where that was like a luxury, like, hey, let's roll fairways, and they got some side benefit out of it, but the purpose wasn't to get the dollar spot control. It was because they were rolling fairways and getting a better surface.
Right.
There probably are some side benefits because you've got a stronger, healthier plant, but
Could you grow out of disease better? Yeah, I would say yes. That's anecdotal, but I mean, I think that's if you had some disease, had to recover from it. These lights make grass grow, so yeah, if you went out there and if you had a bad case of dollar spot and you cleaned it up with a contact and got it growing, but we don't make any claims of disease suppression, stuff like that at all.
Yeah. So somebody else Brandon has another or a question, part of which was probably answered with the disease thing, but it says, have you seen any instances of added disease pressure with extended light periods or major changes with PGRs and fungicides? So I guess, from the disease standpoint, we can just say that's answered, but what about PGRs? You're trying to obviously encourage growth, but sometimes it's nice to have the PGR suppress or at least put the energy into other parts of the plant, tillering, more density. What do people do that are using these lights? Are they on PGRs or anything?
Yeah, it varies here in the U.S. because a lot of guys are using them. We actually saw in some of our research this summer, like our LED, the high pressure sodium makes the grass grow. It makes it, I mean, when I say makes it grows quicker and it grows up. But what we did see with our LED lights is it actually made a more compact growth. The color enhancement wasn't as strong, but we got some images of some Bermuda grass stolons, and there was a more compact. They had shorter stolon or internode lengths on the stolons. So I'll be honest. I've only been with the company about 9 months, and we have guys using them and how they interrelate together. But it's like anything when you start using those and how do they work together. But we have guys using both PGRs and the lights. And we've talked about doing some.
I'm gonna move to a better area that my light is not so blown out. I'm in my house and I'm sitting in an area where I'll sit at my kitchen table now.
There you go. I would say we have had some talk about some future research and combining plant growth regulators with the lights and looking at those results.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that there could be a lot of benefits from that type of research, just from the standpoint of obviously your goal is to get light to areas that are shaded and don't have light, but there could be a lot of other positives that come out of, that could potentially reduce pesticide use, or anytime you have a stronger plant, you're going to possibly need less pesticides. And there could be some negative effects too, in terms of the heat and causing certain diseases to take off and stuff. But I don't know. So it wouldn't be a major concern for SGL. It would just be something interesting to look at. Yeah,
we did see, and it's kind of related, where one of our clients, they had really tough, their south side of, similar to that, it wasn't that drawing that I showed you earlier where there was a really tough light conditions on the south side of the field, but they were targeting that south side of the field, and they really improved that. And even though the north side of the field was still getting sufficient sunlight, the coaching staff was saying man, the south side's actually better now. And then they started supplementing additional light on the north side, which really by the textbook already had enough light. And then now they do feed with light the entire surface.
So Kurt had another question. He said, what type of maintenance is needed for the LED lights? I would add for both of them, not just the LED, but LED and high sodium.
The LED are pretty maintenance free. They're pretty maintenance free. They're solid state. I have one here. It's in my garage. I should have brought it with me. I could have showed you the armature, but they're pretty rugged. Now I did have to, this summer I had to go replace one for here in the US. We had one on demo, and when you do have to replace them, you can tell that they're generally a little better. They're a little more durable because it was quite a chore to actually replace that armature. The HPS, high pressure sodium, they're more delicate. You can hear them kind of bouncing around, and you just got to be more careful with them. And there's a failure rate on those. They're glass. There's filaments in there, and we have a failure rate like 3% or something like that. So there is more upkeep involved with the sodium rigs than the LED rigs. So it's a good question.
Yeah. It's interesting when you have people coming in from all around the country. I mean, people and probably around the world. I don't know where everybody is because I can't see their location, but obviously like Hawaii and some other places. So you get questions that I wouldn't have always thought of coming from central Pennsylvania.
Gotcha. I would add one other thing about just the durability. We get this question a lot. Like these things are made to be outside. Like I've got images of them. It's pouring rain, but they're supplementing light. So, from that standpoint, they're pretty durable, but they run, even though they're high voltage and stuff, they're well protected, and they live outside, regardless of the conditions. So it's just, I was impressed with when I first saw them. So,
Nice. Well, I don't see any other questions. Kyle, I'm going to unmute you. Hopefully you're still there. I'll see if I can unmute you. I don't know if I can. Yeah, there you go. So I'll maybe have you just kind of wrap it up. Kyle, what are your thoughts on the virtual Turf Club meetings?
I thought it was first time go around. Matt, just want to say thank you, and Dr. Kaminsky, just thank you for this. We had a nice little attendance. I think we had 27 people at max.
Good.
So yeah, it's definitely something that we can hopefully look to towards the future with everything going on and this quarantine going on. With that being said, Matt and Dr. K and everyone else in here, I just hope everybody's doing good and staying safe, staying healthy. And with that, Matt, thank you very much. That was a really good presentation. I'm glad that we could put that together.
Thank you. Well, somebody mentioned it, and when you guys get back to having in-person meetings, I owe you some pizzas. So I'll hook you guys up with some pizzas when you guys ever get back in the classroom then. So.
All right.
In the past year, they've been on a rage of spending tons of money on pizza for every meeting, so they're like breaking themselves. So I'm like, now we need to get some guest speakers to pay for the pizza.
There you go. Yeah.
Usually what happens is if we get people in person, we take them out to dinner. So now we owe you a dinner as well. So we'll make sure we can get you up here and take you out to dinner. But
cool.
Kyle, with that, I think this is good. I think that we'll wrap it up with that, and I'll stop the recording. But we'll try to maybe do a couple more of these before the official end of the semester for Penn State starts, even though everybody's at home. And then for any World Campus students that might be listening in and others, this is a good example of possibly being able to, even when we go back to having in-person meetings, being able to do these type of additional benefits to having these meetings online, so that we can get some good questions and people joining us that normally couldn't. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording, but thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Matt.
Yeah. Cool. No problem. Thanks, guys. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yep. Stay safe. Yep.
All right, everyone. Thank you.